A few days ago, I spoke to a group of Model A Ford owners in Tulsa about the infancy of, if you will, of the American auto industry and the U.S. highway system. And as much as these people are immersed in a period of early automotive history, they were surprised to learn about the origins, the foundational elements. Let's take this a step further. From the perspective of the 21st century, where we sit today, can you imagine an America, a world without the automobile? Let alone a time when it was such a wonder that it received top billing over the fat lady and the albino at the Barnum and Bailey circus. Likewise, with a highway system that allows drivers to traverse the continent in a cocoon of climate controlled comfort. It's difficult to imagine an era when a coast to coast drive was worthy of headlines throughout the world. Ah, fascinating. Initially, even astute businessmen saw little future for the horseless carriage. The Duryea brothers became the first manufacturers of automobiles in the United States. They were based in Springfield, Massachusetts, and began producing automobiles about 1893. And in 1896, 95, 96, Barnum and Bailey Circus, as I mentioned, gave them the Duryea motor wagon top billing at the circus sideshow. And Montgomery Ward was credited with saying the automobile was something you should take the children to see before the fad passes. But this view was relatively short lived. Well, God bless. By 1898, we had the first automobile race in the United States took place in Chicago. In 1900, more than 40 automobile manufacturers gathered in New York City at the Madison Square Gardens for the first auto show. And by 1906, we were setting land speed records with automobiles. A Stanley steamer, a specially modified Stanley steamer at Ormond Beach, which is now Daytona Beach in Florida, was driven to a speed of nearly 150 miles an hour. Pretty astounding how fast we did this. 1903, Dr. Samuel Jackson made the first cross country drive in an automobile. In 1909, the United States manufacturers produced something like 828,000 horse drawn vehicles and somewhere around 125,000 automobiles. One of the interesting companies in this era that they weren't alone. There was a lot of companies doing this, but one of the more famous was Studebaker. They were producing horse-drawn vehicles and automobiles at this time. Studebaker in the 1870s was one of the largest manufacturers of wheeled vehicles in the world. And when they started producing automobiles around 1900, the first vehicles were an electric with designs by Thomas Edison. Fast forward for 20 years from 1909. The horse-drawn vehicle has kind of disappeared. So has the supportive infrastructure. But even though it's almost been entirely swept from the stage in that year, 4,000 horse-drawn vehicles were still being produced. But think how much society had changed. We talk about today adapting to new technologies. Think about how wheelwrights and wagon makers and blacksmith shops, multi-generational businesses were changed. Think about the roadsides of America, how they were changed. Think about how cities were changed by this dramatic shift from horse-drawn to vehicles. No fabric of our national identity was left unscathed by this. We largely had bicycles were a start of this. We'll talk more about that in the future, but we had a great manure crisis in the cities because of the horses. And some visionaries, they saw that the automobile was a solution for the pollution. We started out 1890s. Believe it or not, we had electric buses, electric taxis on the streets of New York. And then the problem with electrics was not many towns had electricity. And so we got into steam-powered vehicles and then, of course, gasoline-powered vehicles. But by 1920, it was more common for families to have an automobile than indoor plumbing. Farmers were set free from the constraints of rural isolation, and they were able to prosper from expanded markets by automobiles. Factory workers enjoyed a new phenomenon. Not only they were receiving unprecedented wages, now they had an automobile, personal freedom, the family vacation. They could embark on week-long safaris into the countryside, thanks to unions that helped get workers paid vacations. And all of this sparked an explosion in tourism-related industries. Sunday drives became a national obsession. And in less than a generation, the nation's entire culture was turned upside down. The American landscape in many places was largely unchanged for a century. It was transformed in the blink of an eye, just a couple of decades. You know, when you traveled rural America, say in Pennsylvania in 1900, there were it was little changed in many aspects, especially roads, from what it had been in 1800. But everything was changing now. In 1919, we had the world's first tricolor traffic signal appeared in Detroit. In 1929, in Woodbridge, New Jersey, the first cloverleaf interchange opened. And by the end of the following year, the federal government was averaging 10,000 miles of paid highway construction annually. And that included legendary Route 66. Here's a little bit of trivia, like you've heard me say before. My pa said it's better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all. Well, Route 66 wasn't fully paved until about 1938, and US 6 wasn't fully paved until about 1952. The entire roadside was lined with billboards, began to crowd the skyline. Vacant lots were transformed into filling stations and used car lots and auto courts and campgrounds. From coast to coast and border to border, a wonderful cornucopia of diners and roadside attractions all vied for the attention of the increasing number of travelers. Some resembled wigwams and pagodas, and others were advertisements themselves, built to resemble giant milk bottles or teapots. Even our national lexicon was rewritten with new words such as motel, doozy, a tribute to the Duesenberg, and road trip. The words to jingles and slogans. See the USA, Chevrolet, dinosaur. Anybody remember that one? Ask the man who owns one. No hill too steep, no sand too deep. All of these became better known than the national anthem. The automobile soon became a quintessential symbol of America, and it reflected the pulse of the nation. A dynamic, forward-moving, progressive country. The 1950s were a time of optimistic, with after the post-war and the Great Depression, wild visions of the future that lay just over the horizon. And the automobiles produced during this period with garish chrome trim and towering fins, they mirrored the mood of optimism and fascination with possible space travel in the nuclear age. The 1960s, well, they can be encapsulated with the Vista Cruiser wagon from Oldsmobile and the Corvair, the quirky little gremlin in the 70s, the pudgy Pacer, the powerful Trans Am, and the Plymouth Voyager represented the road trips in the decade of the 1980s. It's kind of hard to believe, but you know, the first generation minivans now are considered classic vehicles. Damn, do I feel old. The automobile was the driving force behind one of the largest societal change in history. Within one generation, the United States became a nation on wheels and a nation on the move, and within 2 generations, we were a car culture nation. We've never looked back. The problem is, what does the future look like for road trips, for the automobile? The electric vehicles are quite contentious. Shouldn't be. They've been with us since the beginning of the auto industry. But things change. We don't have to like the world that changes. We don't have to be happy with it. But the world will change. Our job is to find ways to adapt without losing who we are. The Model A Ford Club people do this wonderfully. They live in this world, they work in this world, some have made great careers in this world, but they haven't forgotten the past. The lowly little Model A Ford that played such an important part, they keep that legacy alive to let us know that the past and the future are connected through the present. Hey, my friends, a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of fun. I hope you found this interesting. I want to encourage you to become a subscriber here on Podbean, become a follower of our Facebook, Jim Hinckley's America, and Instagram. Check out our Substack, and don't forget the Jim Hinckley's America website. I got two more websites to share with you that I think you're going to really find exciting. These are not my creation, but I am working with them and helping the organizers and developers of these sites. Visit kingman.com and Kingman Tours, www.kingman.tours. A couple great projects I got going. Hey, speaking of projects, the latest issue of Magneto magazine, a real high-class publication out of the UK, has an article I penned about Mr. Ralph Teeter, the prolific blind inventor that gave us cruise control. Thought you might find that of interest. Lots of great things coming down the pike here at Jim Hinckley's America. Things are finalized. I will be in 29 Palms, California for the 90th annual Pioneer Day celebration on the weekend of October 16th. Friday night I'll be speaking. Saturday morning I'll be signing books and answering questions. Got some other stuff coming up, but you can find out more about that on Jim Hinckley's America Facebook page or the website. With that said, I'm going to wrap this up. We'll send you off with a little bit of music from our good friends at Road Crew, Joe and Woody and those boys. Roadcrew66.com if you need a theme song for your road trip or to inspire a road trip or two. And speaking of road trips, let's give a shout out to some good friends of mine that can help you create the ultimate road trip experience here in the United States or in Canada. We'll start with Chantel and Stephen down at Route Trip USA. They are bespoke holiday specialists, do a fantastic job. They hire, if they don't know it themselves, and they spend a lot of time on the road testing these places themselves, so they're very like-minded like us. We don't tell people where to go until we've tasted the enchiladas and tested the pillows. But if Chantel and Stephen can't get there, they hire consultants such as myself to ensure you have a great holiday experience. Route Trip USA, Austin Coop. First-rate job, coach or caravan tours along Route 66 into the Southwest. Fall colors. Does an amazing, he's got a great tour. If you're an automotive history buff, he's got a great tour through the upper Midwest, Indiana, southern Michigan, hitting all the great auto museums. But he had such a personal touch, you can't go wrong with Two-Lane America and tours led by Austin Coop. And, of course, my good friend Sam Murray down at Gilligan's Route 66 Tours. He's got Route 66 tour, a caravan tour, or a self-drive tour. The self-drive tour is pretty spectacular. He's created a fully immersive trip that you take at your own schedule, but he's got some specialty items that he adds into this that no other company offers. And it becomes almost like having your own tour guide in the car when you travel. So those are some great helps there. And if you're on the road, well, you got to stop in and experience David Brenner's Roadrunner Lodge Motel in Tucumcari. He has had such an attention to detail on this that it is a 1960s time capsule. Pop in and say hello to Vicky at Ashcraft at the Enchanted Trails Trading Post and RV Park in New Mexico. Not only is this a first-class, ultra-modern RV park, it is also a travel trailer museum with a few huts and automobiles scattered in there. And Vicky is a wealth of knowledge. She's been such a big supporter of the Route 66 community for decades. She's quite knowledgeable, very helpful. Give a shout out to Dina Nelson, State Farm Insurance here in Kingman. Definitely a hometown hero and a big supporter of our work, which we are most appreciative of. And of course, the Route 66 navigation app, creators of Touch Media, creators of the app and the Route 66 passport program. I can't say enough about Route 66 navigation. The owner's dedication to ensuring this is the best available, and they don't rest on their laurels. They're always on the road trying to improve this. So Route66navigation.com. Check that out as well. Hey, my friends, thank you for joining me this morning. I hope you found this interesting and informative. Join us again next week for another fascinating chapter in the American story. Don't forget the live stream editions of Coffee with Jim on the Jim Hinckley's America YouTube channel. Until we meet again, my friends, adios. Bye-bye.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.